Hey gents and gentlets, we're talking about Comic-Con and a little bit of a YouTuber tip for your channel. Welcome to the Late Night Show. So on my journey of trying to create better videos, I experimented with a lot of different products out there. And one of the products I experimented with was this contraption. Now there's no camera on it, obviously because you're sitting over there. But basically it's got a little shoulder mount. You rest it up there. You got your two little, like a machine gunner, you know? And then you can film with that. So I was using this, and there's a big deal about balancing it, so it's kind of heavy up front and not heavy in the back. And I had my audio equipment and battery packs and wireless thing, and it was kind of heavy. So basically, I was at this guest speaking panel for Star Wars and physics, and a bunch of nerds doing all sorts of cool things. Basically, they're looking at the Death Star, like the logic behind it and gravity and how the gravity will work in it, and also lightsabers and how could a lightsaber actually be real. And they talked about all the nerd stuff on that. But basically I was kind of like guinea pigging because I kind of wanted to hear what they were talking about, and I wanted to test out the new equipment before I went to VidCon. Thankfully I tried it out first, because then I realized it's very impractical to stand there for an entire hour, including the entire day, with this thing on your shoulder. And it's a cheaper stabilizer. I'll put the link in the description. I got it from B&H. So, you know, sometimes getting the cheaper equipment, it's better to run without it than honestly than to try to get the cheaper equipment. Like, honestly, it would have been easier to carry around a tripod the entire time and then just set that up, because at least when you're actually filming and it actually matters, then the camera's solid. And you'll see in this video, like, I had to use some After Effects stabilization, and there's some pretty bad moments of me switching arms because it was getting really heavy. Anywho, you don't have to watch this if you don't want to. I thought it was cool, and you can kind of get an experiment. So if you're looking at this doohickey, I forgot how much I paid for it, honestly. I want to say it was like $100. I don't know, it might have been more. Again, I'll put it in description so you'll know what I bought. And I don't know if I'd recommend it, honestly. Maybe if you're just doing like a quick 6-minute video, you know, like a music video or something like that, this might be kind of cool for it, because for a short period of time, up to 30 minutes, you can get some pretty good stable movement out of it without it being all shaky. But with this, it's already been like half the day of me walking around Comic-Con filming stuff. So yeah, but yeah, I wasn't going to show this on the main channel because the quality just wasn't there. But hey, if you're on this channel, you might like seeing what I see, right? Anyway, here it is.
Okay. I would like everyone to keep in mind that we are going to focus mainly on the first 6 movies. We're going to try and stay away from episode 7. That's a lot of research first day. Look who shows up. Yeah, we got Burke. Sneak in. Chris. Hey! And also a lot of the stuff we're going to be discussing will be with the physical properties of our universe. Granted, you know, Star Wars, you know, nobody's ever been able to discuss, you know, their physical property. It could be something completely different than what we're used to.
It'll be in our universe, but a different galaxy, obviously, and a different part of space-time also, because it's a different part of the galaxy and the universe. It means it has a different part of space-time, so that's why it's a long time ago, but I mean, really what is time anyways, and I guess we'll tell you about that.
So, we'll get started. My name is Mike. I am a member of the 501st Clone Trooper, Star Wars enthusiast. Also do a lot of prop building on the side. Yes. There you go.
Hi, I'm the weird one. I'm also a prop builder. I work for Nerdco Creations. Also do a little stuff for the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. I'm part of the Rebel Legion, and yeah, we're gonna go through the science and stuff. Also, I majored in physics, so I got a little bit of a science background here.
Yeah, so I'm Will. That's my dog Einstein up there. He's pretty cool. And I studied molecular biology mostly in college. I have a degree in that. And I like Star Wars, and I also like physics, but mostly molecular biologist. But you know, physics is good too. So.
All right, so we're going to start off with, we want to talk a little bit about the physical properties in space, and everybody remembers this scene.
Hey, right there.
Okay, classic Star Wars. I mean, you can't. Now, the first problem we're going to have with that is sound, okay? You can hear my voice because my voice is vibrating or, moving the molecules in the air. There is none of that in space. So, for example, the guy inside the shuttle is going to hear something hit the shuttle because there's air inside the shuttle to vibrate, to move. The astronaut outside will not hear anything. Do you guys want to touch on that at all? Or? I mean, it's pretty, so, the loud ships, the lasers, all that, the explosion, not going to hear any of it. Absolutely, in mute. Okay, and we'll get into how it should be played. If you want to really, get technical, we'll get into how that should be done in a little bit. We'll get into it. As long as we're talking about the explosions, fire in space, a whole different concept than what we're hearing. I did find this through Discovery Channel News. It was actually a really, really interesting video. Kind of explains it a little
What
more.
is the difference between fire in space and fire on Earth? A lot. Here on Earth, fire is under the dominion of gravity. Think of a candle. As the fire consumes the oxygen and heats the air, the hotter air rises and the heavier, cooler, unburned air sinks, replenishing the fire's fuel. Thanks, gravity. In space, this cycle doesn't happen. There's no such thing as lighter or heavier air in microgravity. Thus, the fire heats the air, which just sits around the flame, causing it to burn slowly, more of a smolder. This also means the flame burns equally in all directions, forming a globe instead of the flickering flame we are used to. Flames in space can burn more slowly, more coolly, and with less oxygen. Because of this, fire in space, given the right conditions, can expand in any direction as quickly as it can combust with nearby oxygen. The heat doesn't cause any rushing air or shock waves or anything else like that like we're used to here on Earth. Fire still works, but it's different.
So now, with that in mind, we have to, we do keep in mind that there is going to be some sort of atmosphere inside every ship. There's got to be something. I mean, none of them are wearing a breathing mask, so I mean, there's got to be something in there to keep them breathing. And also, the material that the ships are made out of, we're going to absolutely assume that some of that's flammable. So the smoke, yeah, you're going to get a little bit of fire. It's not going to react anywhere near what, we're used to seeing.
Need to get through. Intensify forward power!
I would say that, depending on where the oxygen tanks are located, what type of fuel they're using, all these things are going to go into how these effects should look and would look in space if we're using the correct physical properties. But we'd have to know all these schematics of all these ships, and it would really come down to particulars of all the different ships and how they're crashing and the things that actually create the explosions. And that's going to actually create different types of flames and different types of things that you can observe in physical space. So that's really what it's going to come down to.
And, perfect example right there, you got the large explosion obviously going in an upward motion, and we've already seen that, that's not how it's going to work. It's not, we don't have the gravity to cause that size of a flame. There was not enough oxygen on that Star Destroyer to make that big of an explosion.
Yeah, the most you'll actually see is just a glow, and then probably some dust particles going every direction, because there is no up or down in space. There's no gravity or anything holding it down, so it's just going to kind of dissipate.
But with the ships being flammable, obviously we are still going to get the smoke that we do see in them. So with that in mind, we'll touch a little bit on the X-Wing and a little bit on the TIE Fighter, and then we'll get into what the space battle should actually look like. TIE Fighter, when Lucas first designed it, he wanted it something recognizable, something that, the common person can see as that's definitely a fighter ship. And if you look at the X-Wing and how closely it'll resemble, the fighter ships of today, or the fighter jets of today, and even how they maneuver, you see the same type of maneuvers from the ships. If we look, we see closely how they have the thrusters. Now, the problem we have with that is the planes we use in our military today, they use the atmosphere to make those turns.
Also, you can tell by the wings how they're kind of taper off towards the end. A lot of people don't realize this, but when they design the X-Wing, they actually put the wings on backwards. So it's actually wider in a spot where it shouldn't be. Another thing is a lot of it was made out of old recycled like model parts. Again, like Mike was saying here, we wanted something a little more recognizable, but the real fact of it is the reason why we make our shuttles look like a plane is for re-entry. Other than that, it's useless in space. There is no aerodynamics once you get out of an atmosphere.
Now, in order for something to work like this, the way they show it, we would have to have thrusters all over the ship, working in perfect unison to get it to turn. It just, it's not going to happen. It looks great,
Especially since the engines on the wings, if you look at them, they're just turbines. Basically, how a turbine works is it needs to be able to pull air in to mix with the fuel to cause it to ignite. There is no air in space, so it's kind of pointless.
And when they design, everything. If you look, the photo on the left is actually the control panel to the X-Wing, and the photo on the right is an F-15. The similarities are, So we'll get into the TIE fighter. I'm sure most people in here understand what TIE stands for. It's the twin ion engines, which means, they're using the ion engine, two of them.
I think actually the way that you would want to do this, because these could actually be, I think, made into like very small size. I think the only way that you get the type of thrust that you'd want in a TIE fighter is if you made it very, very small and had a bunch of them, because the only thing that the twin is applied to is the fact that it needs to be on separate sides so you can have different thrust put on there so that you can maneuver. But if you had a lot of them in sort of like a cellular structure, and then had them on like a shoulder joint that you could actually move via a computer with some electronic input so that you can move it around, you could actually get that maneuverability, get the power that you want. But yeah, I think the thing is that just one of these is not enough output, but if you mounted them like that, you could actually potentially get the output that you wanted and actually get the maneuverability that you wanted in a TIE fighter. So it's actually possible, I think.
Now, we already have a ship in space with an ion engine, and was it 97?
Yeah, it was 97.
97, they launched a ship called Deep Space One, and it uses this ion. The power behind it, the best way to describe it is if you put a piece of paper on your hand, that would get the amount of pressure it puts against the ship. So it moves extremely, extremely slow. Very fuel efficient, but extremely slow. So for long journeys, would be great. But to do the maneuvers, they're going to go. I'm talking brutally slow. Yeah, brutally slow. So you were just saying play all the space the battle scenes on mute. If you wanted to be a little more realistic, this is what you're going to play. There you go. That's a little more realistic, folks. Not quite as exciting as Lucas had wanted. And I think we probably would have had people get up and walk out of the theater at that point. And actually, I've sped it up because of time constraints. This is extremely hard to watch.
But keep in mind though that it is in space. There's no friction or anything like that. So really, the only forces that are going to be exerted upon a spacecraft is going to be gravity. So that's the only force you're going to be fighting. And so whatever you're not going to be using any sort of fuel or anything like that. You're going to be using some sort of electro system coupled to a gravitational system. So that's sort of what we're going to get into a little later.
So I did want to talk a little bit about the lightsaber.
Ooh, my favorite part.
Yeah, I like this part too, because this is definitely possible. I can definitely see real lightsabers.
I'm going to let them guys take the lead. As much as I love the lightsaber, I'm going to let them guys take the lead.
May I, Mike?
Now, keep in mind, a lot of the information I got from this, I've read a lot of work from Dr. Don Lincoln. He's a senior physicist. I mean, just extremely smart guy. He's got a lot of books out there. If you ever, looking for something to put you, to sleep, perfect guy to read. Okay, there's that. Okay.
Oh yeah, so as everybody's heard of what a plasma is. So a plasma is basically, you have an ionized particle, and these particles, you put it. The way I see that a lightsaber would work is if you had a canister of gas, say in the chamber of the lightsaber, and that gas canister was under pressure. You also had above that gas canister, you would have an electrical field that would be exerted across this way, and the gas would come out this way. And so when that gas goes through that electric field, it generates plasma of a certain height above that field because the gas is passing through that field. Yeah, all the details would have to be engineered, around that, how big of a, how large of an, amplitude and of a voltage that you actually need there, and also with the amount of pressure that needs to be put out of the gas canister. And the gas itself would have to be figured out. You'd have to figure out exactly the type of gas you want to use. But it's very possible. And the thing that would change is if you went to different planets, you'd be under different gravitational fields, under different air pressures, under all these different factors. So you'd have to have an internal computer that could actually control those different mechanisms in order to change the field strength and change the gas pressure, so that you could actually have a lightsaber of a specific height at all times, and it would maintain the integrity of that saber. So.
Well, as for the colors, that is plausible. We have plasma cutters today. People actually use them in everyday work for like welding and all kinds of other stuff. So if you've ever seen like a miniature little plasma cutter, or the thing looks like a gun and cuts through the metal, that's pretty much the same thing, just it would be on a bigger scale. So you'd have to try to find some source of, like you said, compressing that gas within a small handle.
It's called a carrier gas, and you'd have the carrier gas go around a jet, which the jet would then change the output of that carrier gas. Then you'd have the circuit above that where that carrier gas goes through. The gas would get excited and be put out of the handle area, and so it's definitely possible to make these, I think. But I mean, the engineering, I'm not an engineer. You'd have an engineer, more of a theory guy, but you'd have to engineer all the components, and you have to be able to make the components and all that sort of thing. But the theory's there. We already have plasma cutters. We have a lot of things that work like this in chemistry also. So I mean, I work with a lot of different jets. Even when you have like a flame, if you take out a lighter and flame, what you see there, that's a plasma. The colors that you see. And so it would be similar to that. You'd have to, figure out how big you want to make your jet and all that, and it would interact in different things. You'd have different interactions based on the gases that you put in and all of those things. So definitely it's possible.
Now,
I'm just wondering, like, that's a question.
yeah, you can try.
It's probably a little bit strange, but does that mean you would have to refill it like you would a lighter? Like refill it with that kind of gas? Like,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they would have to be pressurized, like a cartridge.
How would you finance that? Because if you were fighting like someone with another sword, it wouldn't just cross through the blades and not even.
Yeah, and that's where we run into a problem is with plasma. It's going to, and it's the same thing with the laser. When Lucas first designed it, he was, when people first saw the lightsaber, first thing they thought, just give me 1 second, I'll get right to you, okay? He got to, everyone thought it was a laser. Now, if you see how a laser reacts, everybody knows how a laser reacts. You know, you get a laser pointer, it just goes forever. There's no way to really control the length of the laser.
If you're generating an electric field in a certain direction, you're going to have a magnetic field coming around back around that electric field. So it is, if you have if you have different, it's going to repel each other upon hitting, depending on the type of gas you're using and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That is possible. Lasers won't do that though. There's no way.
Mind you, don't try building one of these in your garage or something, because you'll be put on the watch list. So.
It's probably better not to even Google it. Just let it go.
Pick up a physics book. Have fun with it that way.
Yeah. Visit your library if you're going to do anything. You got more to add on that? Oh.
Would the heat from the base of the lightsaber incinerate your hand?
That's going to be our next issue. Is the heat with the plasma is definitely going to be extremely hot. Again, obviously the Star Wars technology is far beyond what we would
Mind you, Vader was covered up from head to toe, so I think he'd be okay.
I don't know. Those plastic gloves of his are going to melt down.
Oh yeah.
Come up with a material, I think, to vent out the heat and actually bring it down. It's pretty easy to engineer a way to take heat from a certain spot. If you know where that spot is, that's going to be radiating a lot. Like a car's radiator works. The car's radiator takes the heat that's going to be coming from a specific point in that engine and then radiates it around the entire car. So if you did that same thing with, say, the bottom of a lightsaber, you could radiate that heat around and you wouldn't even notice that it was hot. But we're talking about, these things are probably going to be right. I don't know the specifics of how this would be engineered, but but it's possible that you could use a radiator type of technology in order to do that. And, material sciences are pretty interesting, these things can be done at nano scales. So.
Now, I know I said I was going to stay within the first 6 movies, but an interesting point about what Chris was saying about venting the gas. What everyone thought was a crossguard on Kylo Ren's lightsaber was actually vents because his lightsaber was so unstable. That's what that was.
You can actually kind of see it not as a steady stream and kind of sparking and going every direction.
This was so unstable, which caused
it wasn't like he did it on purpose. It's just
Well, would you also need like a huge amount of power for that as well?
That would be the next issue. Yeah, the amount of power that would take to do something like that. It's unfair.
For them being long ago in a far galaxy, they were more advanced than we are. So
it would depend on the type of gas that you used again, because matter is made up of in one molecule, in one atom, you can have a lot of energy. It's just getting that energy out through a certain type of excitation. So it depends on the type of gas you're using and all these different things. So it is possible to get that energy to come out, but you're only going to be using one electron excitation. Although if you have if you use different types of compounds and you use different types of molecules and things like that, then you can instead of having the power in just the base, you can extend that power all the way throughout the thing with the molecules interacting and things like that. So you don't necessarily, think of it as tremendous energy, because there's tremendous energy in just one atom. So
again, a lot of the research, and if you guys want to see, it's kind of small up there on the screen. A lot of the stuff on the lightsaber we did, building a lightsaber, was taken off of Dr. Don Lincoln's paper. It can be read right here. If towards the end, if you guys want, you could absolutely come up here, and I can give you the link, and we can go from there. First off,
back on the lightsabers, how would two lightsabers collide? Would they pass through each other?
That's what he was talking about.
We were mentioning
So it does depend on, I think, it's going to depend on, what the material is, but if it's going to generate a magnetic field, then those magnetic fields are going to repel each other, which if you have an electric field moving in a certain direction, then you're going to have a magnetic field in the opposite direction. It's going to be sort of like a tube going around the lightsaber. So if, and if they all have the same magnetic field because they're all the same lightsaber, then they are going to repel each other because you're in the same, the same type of field. So they're going to repel each other. That's what I think.
Someone looking at you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, yep.
Yeah, just on this, I saw a documentary with Michio Kaku actually talking about how to build a lightsaber practically, and he's talking about using carbon nanotubes as a battery. Basically, you charge up the nanotubes and they can charge this thing up. I'm not sure how much of it is what he was saying is accurate, but just thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, the materials technology is getting so advanced that we can lay layers of atoms in order to make, say, a radiator. I mean, you can make these, pretty amazing machines on just a microchip now. I mean, you can make an entire engine on a microchip. So if you can do that with carbon nanotubes, you can use carbon nanotubes for a lot of things. I mean, the thing is, it's carbon and it's a nanotube, but I mean, you can make carbon into, sheets. You can make carbon into anything. You can make little models out of, but nanotubes can be used. Yeah, I'm sure nanotubes can be used.
That's definitely something I'd like to look into, and brought up a great point.
Yeah, I saw it on YouTube. Just type in Michio Kaku lightsaber, and you should be able to find it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'll definitely look into. It's an interesting point. But again, a lot of the notes I took from this paper, I had like 5 pages of notes, and that I didn't even touch on this paper. It was extremely long, and for time constraints, we're going to we'll move on to prosthetics, which are used in almost every one of the movies. And yeah, we can do this. We do this now, kind of. But you start with, we'll start with General Grievous, who is, kind of like the first generation prosthetics they were using, the robotics. Very clunky. Picture on the left is General Grievous in his traditional bone mask before his robotics. Upper right is without the bone mask. And he was actually a Kalish warrior. And he actually chose to have the robotics put on to heighten his skills. Personally, I think he was a much better warrior than anyone else with robotics or with the prosthetics.
I was dealing with this Jedi side myself.
Don't move.
You fool! I've been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku.
By the way, if Vader could do that, yeah, no contest. Don't care who it is. Give that technology to Vader and we're good. I personally think that's the greatest scene in any this movie is him spinning the saber like that. And I don't know why he said ow. Still questioning that.
Well, you gotta understand, he's not a robot. He's technically a cyborg. He does still have a beating heart. He does still have slight organs. Of course, they are vulnerable.
They can keep all his main organs.
Yes. His eyes are real, his head is real, his brain is real.
Build immune systems inside of these things. I don't even know how that would go. That would be a tough thing in
You
itself.
look at his eyes. You look at his eyes, his face. You can tell he's still a carbon-based creature behind that. Okay, another thing I wish Vader could have done. Good. That would have been awesome.
If anything, the most accurate thing was him getting sick because his organs and everything were more out in the open. Bacteria, stuff flying in the air, different planets, atmospheres, and stuff. Who knows where that lightsaber's been?
Yes, he does. Yep. So you realize. Now, with him being the first, the first generation, earlier models of prosthetics, stuff like that. That's why he's having a hard time breathing as they get more, technology throughout their universe.
Yeah, I think you need some tums.
Yeah, 6 shots, really? 6 shots? Stormtroopers go down with 1, 6, really? Yeah. By the way, jerk.
So uncivilized.
Slightly. But yeah, it was very low technology for what they had in their universe. So he was quite clunky. Had some cool aspects, but very, very clunky. But the next generation was obviously one of my favorites.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the galaxy's first asthmatic.
Now, we all know he lost his arm at first with Count Dooku. Started out that way. That's where he all started. And the rest of him, because of that jerk. Again, don't like him. Don't like him. But, completely plausible. We've got prosthetics now that we use that are, our advances in medicine are just, we're making them leaps and bounds. So I'm going to let Will take a little more on this.
Yeah, sure. I can talk about this for a little bit. I guess the biggest difference would be, if you're trying to improve somebody to just make them more of a bionic human and make them more advanced, improve their abilities and strength and things like that, you'd have a different approach than if you're going to be rebuilding somebody because they were damaged. So I think that's, if the theories are like that, and that's the difference between General Grievous and Darth Vader, then I'd say from the perspective of Darth Vader, you'd have to rebuild him from all the parts that were missing. So you obviously attached arms and legs to those parts that were chopped off, and that you would have to open up that carburized wound, and you'd have to physically put in electrodes that could actually transmit the signal from his nerves to that part of the robotics, and that is possible depending on the type of electrode that you use. You could use something that say potassium or a different chemical that's actually produced by the human body and transmitted throughout nerves. You could actually make a sensor at the end of that could actually move and actually transmit that signal down a cable or a wire of some sort. So that's how I think it would be done if you were going to attach prosthetics in the way that they show in Star Wars. I also think that to rebuild lungs, you'd want to use stem cells. I don't think that you would use stem cells for, say, regrowing a hand, because cartilage actually only has 1 cell inside of it, and bone would be very, very difficult to build. You'd have to create a chemical broth and then create a scaffold of cells and do all that sort of stuff.
It's also time consuming there. It takes up a lot of time to do that type of process, and even for it to grow like that, there's not a guarantee that it would take. A lot of it is very unstable and still in the process, but we are working on things like that. So, but yeah, he is exactly right. The stem cell thing would actually probably be the best way to go about it, so that way it could actually be from your body and growing itself. But
yeah, that would only work in certain circumstances. Like in the next slide, we'll show you for the lungs specifically. The lungs would be good to regrow via stem cells.
Blood chemistry, amount of oxygen, carbon dioxide, how much sugar's in his blood, his temperature, heart rate, all those normal physiological things. Those are then brought in to replace Darth's lung with a prosthetic lung. This sort of technology exists right now. You just take like a lab sponge like this and put it in the chest cavity. You notice that the sponge has got little holes in it and you can put fluids in here and other compounds, growth factors. You can even have stem cells that migrate in here. You want to reconstruct the same sort of layer that would be on the surface of the lungs. And this is being done right now. It's being done with a lot of different polymers. Even fat cells are being re-engineered.
Okay, so for things like the lungs, which are just damaged, I think you could potentially put some sort of growth factors in there, and in a specific order and in a specific way, and possibly regrow some of those burned parts. But you probably want to sort of vacuum the lungs out first, get all that burned debris out. Then once you did that, then you want to do some X-rays and things like that. And then figure out where it needs to be rebuilt. And all those things. But if you're going to, work with someone like Vader, he's going to be pretty much. I think Vader's not exactly a human anymore. I think he's more of a, sort of a cyborg. I think that's why he has different names, and I think that's why, why he's so different and why he changes so much, throughout the story. But he would. Yeah, I mean, he still has his brain, and I guess, but he doesn't move very well. Yeah, so
that's why you see him in the first, the original Star Wars, the original trilogy, moving so slow and so clunky. He didn't have that movement. The suit is obviously extremely heavy, very exhausting to wear.
Also, you got to keep in mind that gravity is different on different planets, depending on the gravitational pull of how close and far away it is from its said sun.
We'll get into gravity. Now we talk, for Vader to go into something like Luke, who had, the hand that they built for Luke was obviously much more than what we have now. Right now, our range of motion for our prosthetics is usually, 5 or 6 different pivot points. To make it like what they had there, they did 28, 30 different ranges of motion. Now we are putting the sensors in now so that people can, actually sense, how tight they're grabbing something. If something's hot, they're able to tell that, just through the prosthetics. The advances we're making in that is just.
That has a little to do with the nerve endings, though, with them connecting up to the nerves.
Yeah, they're having a little bit of it, but they are definitely making.
Yeah, the interface between the nerves, your biological nerves and an electrical system, that would be the biggest area that you'd have to bridge that gap between your biological nerves and then the robotic system, which and then throughout that entire system, the smaller technology gets, the better that we can have complex systems in a very small area, not an area, but a very small, three-dimensional, area. Whatever the other word, not area, because it's cubic, whatever. If we can contain.
Wow.
Is that the technical term?
Yeah, that's a technical term.
It has a tech term there.
Cubical, whatever.
So you can contain things like that can sense in 3D and have inputs from all 3 areas, but then those inputs can be transmitted also in a way that you can tell what section that was coming from. Then it's possible that you can have sort of a actual hand that can actually sense like a hand. And I think also part of it, you're gonna have like a lot of fluids. You have a lot of fluids in your hand, and that actually shift due to gravity, and your brain can sense that shifting. So there's a lot of different systems that need to be built into these different prosthetics in order to really recreate the sensation of having a new limb. But I mean, these things are going on, and I think, building around the scaffolding of the robotics, using stem cells and things like that are going to be, that's what we're going to have to do. So
now, a lot of our prosthetics we're using now are also operated with lithium-ion batteries. As we can all see from our cell phone, they're getting smaller and smaller by the day. You walk into T-Mobile today, buy a phone, and by the time you walk out, it's outdated technology. It's incredible.
So true.
They've actually got batteries, lithium batteries right now, the size of a credit card that you recharge, I hate to say it, by urinating on it. So, you know, Vader's prosthetics, who knows what he's doing in the suit to keep himself going. And it's probably better we don't know at this point.
Well, he did have that comfy egg capsule bathroom there, so yeah.
And we did have a question while we're here for, yes.
When in the scene where Obi-Wan shot General Grievous,
Yes.
wouldn't the organs of vaporize before they caught fire?
Not necessarily, because that traces back to the plasma, because in the blasters, and we didn't really touch on it too much with into the blaster technology, you know, again, because of time constraint. Shooting a laser probably, you know, not a real feasible thing, but a plasma pulse, absolutely. A laser, a very strong laser, if you were to put it against your skin, it could burn, but it's going to stop burning as soon as you let go.
Yeah, and it depends on what the definition of vaporizing versus burning. So burning would be the breakdown of carbon molecules into, you know, other types of carbon molecules via oxygen. So vaporization would be, vaporizing something, moving it and just exciting those molecules away from that body that it was originally on. So I would say that, you know, depending on the technology, depending on the heat, but I don't think they would vaporize. I think they would likely burn because they're mostly made of carbon, and they're probably using a very high energy sort of beam coming out of the blaster. So
Again, there would have to be some kind of recharge point or pressurized gas or cartridge.
Instant clips.
Oh, yeah. If you pay attention to the E11s, which were made off the old World War II weapons that they used for the original trilogy, they did have clips coming out the side.
So that's always a possibility.
Yes.
So the question about, say, vacuum tanks, since we're on the, just talking about prosthetics, and you mentioned stem cells earlier, how feasible would it be to actually create a vacuum tank, to actually regrow it or attach limbs or heal your skin?
Yeah,
we are pretty close to that already.
I definitely think healing the skin of, like, say, a burn victim, that's definitely feasible using a sort of like a broth you would put your burned area in. When it comes to regrowing the limb, I think you'd want to use the robotic technology and it has a scaffold to the stem cells, because if you use the robotic technology and then you also use the stem cells, then you could actually create a scaffold and regrow the parts that you'd like to have as sensors in those areas. But you can't regrow, say, bone or cartilage. That's going to be very time consuming and difficult to do. Cartilage is made of like one cell. So those parts you want to remain robotic and made of, like, say, metal or say maybe a carbon type of material. But the soft parts around it that are mostly fluid, you want to have some sort of cellular basis to those. You don't really need, say, an immune system in those areas, because if you have a sort of a skin in those areas, then you wouldn't need sort of the immune scaffold that you need, say, in the lungs or another area. So I hope that answers.
And that broth that he was talking about, or something that you could help.
Vacuum tank, what that's what you would be in the vacuum tank, pretty much is that broth that you're referring to.
Yeah, well, if you remember correctly, Luke Skywalker, after he was attacked by the Wampa, he was floating in that liquid. It was kind of like, well, depending on whether you got the remastered or not, went from a green tinge to like a bluish tinge. Yeah, that's pretty much what he was mentioning. It could be something that is to help you heal your skin. Now, naturally, your body, being like mostly water, grows and heals itself a lot better also in water.
But you fuse particles throughout that water-based solution, and based on the way that you fuse the particles and the cell types that you have in there, and the way that you apply those cell types to the areas that are affected, then you could, you could create, cell division. You could create, cell differentiation.
Sky's the limit. Yeah.
So it just depends on how you diffuse those molecules through that broth and actually apply them to the human being or the human part that's in that broth with the with the molecules in mind that you're adding to it. Okay. So.
Yes.
So I'm really interested in all this. I'm actually a stem cell engineer.
Oh, very interesting.
A lot of the focus in the current field is not to replace a limb, to grow a new limb using stem cells from yourself.
Yeah.
And actually use chemicals to promote self-healing. So like in the
that would be like that broth.
yeah, like in the broth. So like all the cells know or have the code in them in their genome to grow. It's just been deactivated. So your arm knows how to grow into an arm. Yeah. Yeah. So you just activate that process again. And a lot of labs are actually looking at that now.
So yeah, how do you feel about, I really think it would be very difficult to build the bones and the other structures again. I think having that robotic scaffolding would be good, and you could just waterproof it. Then from that robotic scaffolding, you could then add those points that you want to build on from using the stem cells, and then you could build around that scaffolding that you have, and you can make a new arm or something like that, and then just attach it. So that's, I think, the best, the easiest way to apply the technology is to say a limb, but I think straight stem cells, say like his burned lungs and things like that, that you definitely use, just with like fluids, put liquid oxygen or fluid, you can just rebuild that area. So absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your input.
All right. Yeah, this is pretty cool. I like talking about the Death Star. So this will be really fun.
And it seems like the more we talk about it, the three of us, we've been, communicating.
Hey, Mike, don't be too proud of this technological terror you constructed. Okay?
Yeah. Are you financing this? Because no. It's funny, we've been communicating back and forth, the three of us, for months, about this presentation and this, that. It seems like every time we get onto this topic of the Death Star, we come up with new theories, and it's just...
Yeah, it's never ending.
So I think the last thing we just talked about before we started the presentation was what's the actual size of the Death Star, because that's going to depend on how much gravitational field it actually has. So the size of the Death Star is about a tenth the size of the moon, so that puts that in perspective a little bit. It's really not going to have any gravitational field, so it's going to be affected by all the gravitational fields around it. So when you're traveling through space, you don't have any air, molecular friction that's going to be slowing you down. You're only going to be slowed down by the gravitational fields around you, how you're going to be exerting upon you because you have lots of planets around you and lots of stars around you. So that's going to be your number one factor when traveling through space. Because the Death Star is not that large, it doesn't have its own gravitational field, and you're going to have to propel it through space because it's going to want to orbit other objects. So my theory is that when they go into the Death Star, they have all the tubes and different pipes and things like that you see. And I think what you could do is you could potentially have small particle accelerators running around the entirety of the Death Star. Because you have these accelerators, then you can create different fields like gravitational fields, and you can create magnetic fields and different things to hold on ships and to propel it and do all those things via just the motion, like circular or whatever you want to make. And you can create all different types of physical and field type phenomena. So
mind you, particle accelerator is something that we have here on Earth, something that we actually have. This technology does exist, and on a bigger scale, the possibilities are numerous of what we could do with it.
Now they do in the movies. They do use the gravitational pull of planets to position themselves. The Battle of Yavin.
Yes.
They started to orbit around Yavin to get around to the moon, where the Revo base was on the far side of the moon of Yavin. So yeah, to move around like that, to use the gravitational pull of other planets, it's plausible. They're obviously going to have thrusters on the ship to get away. Otherwise, once they're in orbit, they're stuck there.
I think the best thing to do is make the thruster out of that sort of particle accelerator deal, because you can make a thruster out of that type of material. You can just accelerate particles a certain way, create a field, and then that will push you forward or whatever way you want to go, depending on how you would actually make that. I don't know, but that's my theory on why they have all the piping and all the different things around the entirety of the Death Star.
And that, or they have just a really bad plumber.
That sounds very plausible.
That is the biggest window I have ever seen, and it's always open. With the vacuum space, that's something that's going to get sucked out. But something they've talked about is windows in space and actually using plasma, going with plasma, and they've actually created one. It was obviously nowhere near that size. It was about 2 inches in diameter, so.
That's a very small window.
Yeah, very small window. It's about the size of the one in my living room in my apartment, you know.
Yeah.
They think that's natural light, thanks. Appreciate it. But, you know, but the amount of energy there's something like, you know, a window like that, a plasma window like that would take is just, it's, you know, infinity energy. There's no way. But you can always assume that's what the white light is around there, is, you know, the field. And you can actually see it more in the prequels, when they made the prequels.
Well, also in the Blu-ray, remember? They spent $1 million to add all that unnecessary stuff. So.
Yeah. Because we all wanted to see, you know, a Jawa stepping.
Or $2.3 million to see Ewoks blink.
That was, $2 million to see Ewoks blink. That was money well spent. You know?
Thank you, Lucas.
But we got talking about the gravitational, the gravity on the Death Star, you know, and the gravitational field. And one of our first theories was, you know, if the Death Star was, you know,
rotating,
you know, centrifugal force, some sort, was a possibility. You know, it could be. You know, which would give you more of this theory.
Like
everybody walking on the walls
right now in space, but we just don't realize it.
Yeah. But the more we got talking about it, you know, if you think about it, we're actually standing on the side of the Earth. We're not, you know, it's not like we're standing on the top, and we're, you know, we're oriented to be facing up.
The problem with this theory that we ran into was that the further in you would go into the levels of the base, the gravity would change drastically. So that's where his ion or the particle accelerator theories were probably more feasible with having to control the environment. Because could you imagine having to go further deep inside there, and all of a sudden your suit goes from feeling like 10 pounds to 100? You know, it's just it's huge difference.
That's where we get to like relativity and things like that, because Einstein was the guy who came up with the fact that, you know, all matter is energy. So
just a quick question. If you had separate orbs going inwards across a single axis, one going this way, one going the other way, they could move at different speeds, creating different effects in the same gravity throughout the different rings.
Yeah, but we know from the schematics and the build from episode 3, when we were looking at how it was built, we were kind of caught with the dilemma of the frame of the Death Star. We had that theory as well.
It kind of seems like it has an axis going top to bottom.
Yeah, and if you notice, the Death Star is slightly tilted too.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of a tilted point, just like Earth.
Now, the problem I ran into that theory, okay, and if you think of it, you know, similar to like the Earth, and the Earth rotating and, you know, our gravitational pull, when the Millennium Falcon lands on the Death Star, it would be like if we took a ship and landed it into the Grand Canyon on the wall.
It wouldn't stay.
You know, if you think of it that way, there's got to be something else, you know, an outside force that's pulling everything in a downward motion. You know.
So yeah, I mean, it gets pretty tricky, because what you have to do is you have to take electromagnetism and you have to turn it into something that has mass and is gravitational. You have to go around all the gravity. So if we talk about in the context of, instead of creating gravity, you talk about escaping gravity, and that's what happens in light speed. And when Han Solo goes light speed in Millennium Falcon. So in that sense, there's been a lot of theories that you can take a supercoil and generate put a electric current through it, and then have a rotating ring above that, and that ring will actually will cause like a force to be exerted in the extra dimensions that are there, and they'll actually propel you, because if you're traveling in light speed, then basically you're going to crash. You're going to go through things. All the matter is not going to be there. There's not going to be any matter anymore because you're traveling at light speed. So you would have to be traveling in other dimensions. You'd have to be. There's no way that you're being in the 3D space that we see here, because there's more complexities in 3D space than that. So we're running a little bit out of time, but that's the theories on that I have.
A couple more things we wanted to get through. Obviously, the destruction of Alderaan. We all know how this goes.
And this is like
We
the
all see it.
only photos we have of Alderaan.
Because lasers do that all the time. They'll all
Yeah.
at one point make a super laser and go. That happened in my yard the other day. Poor dog. This is a little more realistic. This is what's going to happen with your lasers. I mean, there's nothing really.
Yeah, there was nothing there to actually bend the light and then combine the light back together. So since that wasn't there,
Easy
then
fix.
you can't do it. Yeah.
Easy fix, right there. Small prism full of them out there. He could have done it. Okay. Now, let's build a Death Star. Okay. Let's dig deep. I'm going to pass a collection plate. Anyone want to chip in? Okay.
We'll do it eventually. We will do it. So please,
What's that?
if you have donations for Death Star.
No, I have not.
Yeah, he did a film series
Okay.
on the Death Star and how the rebels were actually terrorists.
Oh yes, yes.
That one's a good one. I talked about the prosthetics.
Again, would anyone like to chip in? That is 13,000 times more than the world's GDP, sorry. Okay. That is tremendous. Okay. Time, hope everybody got a lunch.
Oh, yeah.
So it would take 833,000 years to produce enough steel just to build the Death Star, okay? So by the time, somebody figured out what you're doing, you gotta fend them off for another 800 millennium.
Yeah,
Anyone got
there's-
that kind of time on their hands?
There's no way that was built within 19 to 20 years. There's just no way.
Well, remember, they are in control of the galaxy.
Right.
Well, of their
And
galaxy.
they have very little competitors with that kind of funding or manpower.
Yes.
Limited number of planets to produce the steel.
Yeah, but see, not every planet's the same also. You're also thinking about different elements, different terrain,
You got meteorites, asteroids, all kinds of junk.
But that is if they use steel, right? I mean, that's our supposer.
Yeah,
They use steel.
So for us to build it, so. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I do want to give credit to, Discovery Channel, obviously, Wikipedia, YouTube, some.
Hope you enjoyed that little guest panel and found some interesting facts in there and got to see how that little stabilizer works. Thanks for watching. Share, smile, they are contagious. By the way, this is my second channel. You can find out more about me by subscribing to my second channel or go to my main channel where all the good videos are at, and that'll be up here. All the little gems, the little magic ones. Bye.
And don't forget to subscribe.